So now, we'll discuss beginning the route to ending B, which begins at the cutscene of a Miijhal unpetrifying Xain after the time skip. Already pretty unusual for a New Game Plus to start you more than partway through the game.
It was really start to boot up to that instead of at the very beginning of the game.
Kind of merciful, though, because you gotta play it a lot of times over.
So now you get some text scenes with music. These sections are played out as Xain's dreams, where you get more of her backstory. And one of the first things that will probably stand out is one of the children who bullies her says, "What you acting like a girl for?" Because Xain is actually intersex. So that's what this bullying is about. I think some people have tried to come up with other interpretations, but it's been confirmed by Yoko Taro that that's what we mean.
Although the term we use is hermaphrodite, which isn't the best term to use.
Yeah, considering the rest of this game, I don't think it was done in bad faith.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But yeah, so that's one of the first standout things, and really what I think explains the whole lingerie thing is this history of bullying for being a girl.
Actually, it's less because she's a girl and more because they explain that because she's intersex, that's taken as a bad omen.
Right.
And they see her as, like, the center of that, and all that's wrong in the community.
These are people living in this, I mean, not that people in present day are great, but I mean, these are people with a lot of superstition surrounding their lives too.
And even then, they were an isolated community, so...
Yeah, the area is kind of a shithole.
Yep. An old lady saves her from the bullying, who is her grandmother, and that also explains why Xain swears a lot, because her grandmother swears even more. Her grandmother also taught her how to use a blade and everything, but she doesn't appear to have any kind of super strength or anything. Eventually, though, her grandmother begins suffering from dementia. While Xain is trying to take care of her, a massive shade, which is the one that you fought before, attacks and burns down her home, mortally wounds Xain, and cruelly, slowly kills her grandmother in front of her. The shade's name is Hook, by the way. As Xain is bleeding out and seeing her grandmother's corpse, it fades out and you have the boss fight with the shade again. And this plays out much the same, though NieR will have his levels and equipment from when you finish the game.
The big shade guy, he also has a name. He's called the Knave of Hearts.
Knave or Jack.
You beat it even easier than you did before, and you get one more dream, and this is going to explain the twist on the second playthrough, and why Xain has her power. She's beset by this horrible dream when she hears a voice, and this murderous shade named Tyran possesses her and promises to give her power as long as she keeps killing and killing and killing, and if she stops, he will overtake her body.
Yeah, Tyran is our final party member! Yay!
He mostly just tells you to kill people, or mocks you for not wanting to kill people.
And for as, relatively speaking, normal Xain seems, she seems like a person would be motivated for normal reasons to do what she does. Turns out it's because this monster is in control of her body.
At the same time, she does have her own reasons to murder the hell out of Shades, especially after Hook.
Yeah.
She kind of deals with her problems through really intense violence.
It's worth mentioning that Tyran is voiced by Spike Spencer, who was Shinji Ikari.
He puts on a really villainous Saturday morning cartoon voice. But not so much that it's really, really distracting. Honestly, I think they made it stand out more so you'd notice the first time he talks.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning that only Xain can hear Tyran, for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Once you enter the Lost Shrine, the hidden passage, you see a cutscene of the stone statue guardian, which is named Gretel, bemoaning her brother Hansel's death from earlier. And these little shades come up and start talking to her, and she seems to dislike them. Then, when you're climbing the shrine, you'll see subtitles pop up when the shades are screaming. You can tell what they're saying now, because that's what it means by Xain's perspective. She knows what the shades are saying. They're begging NieR to turn back, and you hear Tyran. In the memories, it was just all text, there was no voice acting. But you'll hear Tyran say, like, he's heard of a place where incomplete shades gather. Also, at this point in the game, I didn't mention it for the first playthrough, but one technical thing that did stand out to me about this game is when you're fighting a high density of enemies, and this is a place where I noticed it the most, instead of the game slowing down, it lowers the resolution, so when there's enough enemies on screen, you'll be seeing pixels.
Huh.
Yeah, but the game is still running at full speed, actually, so you get it over with faster than if the game slowed down to handle all that. Which, since a lot of games don't really do it quite as noticeably, it actually stands out as an artistic touch, even though it's probably not. As you advance further up, you'll get another cutscene, and Gretel has now befriended the Shades, saying that she judged them for going Gestalt before their change was complete.
Yeah, they're just little kids.
And that's why they were carrying school books and coloring books and stuff.
It's also worth noting there's a quest where you just find a small shade in the village, and he just wants to play, but you murder him senselessly.
Yeah.
And it's one of those situations where, even without the context of knowing that the Shades were people, it stands out as like, what?
Yeah.
It's very clear that you are not doing something you should be.
Well, also, in the intro section, after you harvest the mutton, that first quest and those Shades appear by the town, they don't attack you ever. But they know that since you just fought a bunch of them during the tutorial, you're just going to kill them.
And when Shades attack later, it's the bigger Shades because you killed their children.
When you get up to the boss fight, Gretel is trying to plead with NieR not to kill the smaller Shades, and Tyron is just having a grand old time with all this going on. The boss fight proceeds as normal, but when you are about to kill Gretel, a lot of her dialogue about wanting to help her friends is a lot like NieR's. The only difference being that you're stronger than her, so you kill her.
I did not see the dialogue because I killed the fight really fast because I was over-leveled.
It's in the cutscene still. There's some other dialogue, but yeah, you can miss some of it. I don't think that's super common.
I was going to say that if you, the listener, are planning on playing this for yourself, you might want to switch the difficulty over to hard for your second playthrough to make sure you hear all of the new dialogue in the boss fights.
Yeah, what I would do is I would deal some damage and then just kind of back off so I could hear the dialogue.
Yeah. Everything else, all the other cutscenes and all the other characters' dialogue stays the same. They literally just added subtitles and Tyron's dialogue to a lot of these scenes. So when you go to the junk heap, before the cutscene of Jacob's death, you see a cutscene of a larger Shade with a smaller Shade running off, and the smallest Shade is actually a young boy named Khalil, and the bigger Shade is her mother. She tells him to run, and she's going to distract the regular humans, well, in this case replicants, that are hunting them down. So she runs off, and Khalil is alone when the robot boss you fought shows up, and in a really weird scene, says, "Oh, you're an intruder, I have to kill you," but then notices that he's crying, and just changes his whole tone. It's like, "Oh, I'm P-33. I'll protect you."
BB is a good robot.
Yeah, nicknames P-33BB, and they talk about wanting to leave and explore the world together. And Khalil tries to quiz P-33 on different stuff, like what's a ship and whatnot. And then you see the cutscene with Jacob dying, which you can tell in the first cutscene that it is Gideon's fault that Jacob dies. But in this case, you also see a cutscene afterwards where Khalil and P-33 bemoan the death of Jacob. And when you get to the junk heap, this is a bit of a fourth wall breaking moment because Gideon gives you the Iron Will sword, but it's already in your inventory, and Vice just says these kind of things happen the second time around.
Yeah.
That was a little goof out of nowhere when I played through the first time.
Then you get to the boss fight, everything else proceeds as normal. When you have the boss fight, Khalil is trying to tell P-33 to desist. Just surrender or whatever, and this really disturbs Kaine. Makes her almost not want to go through with it, but Tyron is egging her on. And when you kill it and Gideon's kicking the crap out of it, Tyron just loves all this happening. He gets off on a lot of it, but this scene especially he just loves because of all the reasons we stated before with how full of hatred Gideon is. Because it makes it more like him.
So, more name stuff. Khalil's name in Japanese is Cleo, who is named after the goldfish from Pinocchio. And P-33, the P stands for Pinocchio.
Well, also these automatons come to life fits the story of Pinocchio as well.
Yeah.
So, in the desert section with Facade, you get a cutscene of the wolf shade, which is named Rock, R-O-C, talking with the other wolves, which can understand him, that this area used to be a forest, actually. The whole thing was desecrated, but he still hopes that he can coexist with the humans. And when you stay the night at the palace before the wedding, you'll see a cutscene. The men of the mask have been murdering the wolves in droves in preparation for the wedding, because they don't want an incident.
Yeah.
So you see Rock running to try and save any of them, but he can't. They slowly just all die in front of him, having been speared through multiple times, and this pushes him over the edge. So when you have the boss fight with him, he actually offers to let the other wolves escape and he'll fight them alone, but they won't leave him. Then when you kill him, he has a vision of an old man who said that I've lived long enough, and it turns out this old man let the wolf become a gestalt, and this old man would just pass on. So he even had a human owner and all this, and had all this empathy, and here he lies speared through the face by a human who was culpable in killing all those other wolves.
I still kind of don't feel bad for Rock because he killed Fira.
I feel bad for both of them, really.
A lot of NieR is like, both sides had their reason for doing what they did. It's still really sad for both.
Yeah, the truth is that they're both victims.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, also worth mentioning, P-33 was shown to die in this game, but there is actually a short novella written by Yoko Taro set after this called The Fire of Prometheus, and P-33 is shown to be alive somehow. Well, he's a robot, so, it could be anything.
Beep, yay!
But then when you head to the area, you just get a short dialogue scene of the villagers saying they want to live with humans, but they're afraid of NieR showing up at all, which is fair. When you're fighting the flower shade, which is named Wendy, as in Peter Pan, she is both not entirely aware of what's even going on, and also has elements of a combined conscience of all the villagers.
Yeah, in general, the more shades in a giant shade, the less stable they become, and the more violent and generally confused they are.
Yeah, the area is pretty tragic, even before you find out the truth, and now it's just,
Yeah, confused is the key word there. But everything up until you get to the ballroom in the Shadow Lord's castle is the same. But then, the shades in the ballroom will say that this is the final bastion of humanity. It turns out those little shade orbs are shade children.
Babies.
And they are terrified. So when they form up on that wizard thing, it's say, don't be afraid, children, come join me. And they become that big boar shade, which is named Goose. Mother Goose, I guess? But that line that Kaine responded to about not needing forgiveness was from Goose saying that they will never be forgiven for what they've done. When Kaine says that, though, Tyron realizes that something about Kaine is changing. He's not entirely sure what it is. He continues to try and egg Kaine on to be violent, but she realizes that she and Tyron both use violence as a crutch for people not liking them.
Yeah.
Also, in the cutscene where Emil sacrifices himself, we also get a scene of the King of Facade finally killing Goose, and it doesn't revive anymore, but everyone has been fatally wounded. And they get the closest to a heroic sacrifice that anyone gets.
Yeah, nobody comes out of this happy.
Though they appear to have the least regrets, and again, that's the goodness of the king and the people who follow him, despite their crime against the wolves. Then during the Shadow Lord boss battle, Tyron notices that Kaine doesn't have any more hate in her at all. And she says it's because of NieR and everyone. It's changed the way she looks at life. Also, you can hear Gestalt NieR's actually pleading with Yona. Like, we went through all this, we have to be together again. But when you beat Gestalt NieR doesn't say anything before Replicant NieR kills him. That is a moment of silence. And it has a lot more impact this time.
I mean, I think NieR realizes it himself at that point.
Yeah. At that point, there wasn't really any turning back, though.
Mm-hmm. So after he dies, that moment before he goes into the light, he is upset that, he failed to bring Yona back and have their life together. But he has a memory of sharing a cookie with Yona in the convenience mart from the beginning, because she actually didn't get to do it because she got sick. And then when they walk in the light together, you see the rest of the killed shades. It's sort of heavenly space. Though P-33 is there as well, which again, maybe he came back different. But Yona also has NieR's half of the cookie. Then the credits roll, and the French version of Ashes of Dreams plays. The lyrics still rhyme, so they definitely changed them, but that's still pretty cool. And in a bit of light in all this darkness after the credits roll, you see that Emil has survived, and he landed in the desert as just ahead.
Happy little skeleton orb. That bit with NieR getting the cookie, calling back to the prologue, that broke me.
Yeah. I was so happy to see Emil was okay, because he's just a precious little skeleton baby, and I love him.
He's great.
Though, like, the first thing he says is he's gonna go look for NieR and Xain and everyone, so... Well, he'll find NieR, I guess.
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Depends on the ending.
Maybe not. Now it pays to discuss one of the main influences on the story of NieR, which was 9/11.
I'm never gonna get tired of being at disbelief about this, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's kind of an extension of what was going with Drakengard, where in Drakengard, Yokotaro's idea was kind of, they kill all these people and they gloat about that.
Yeah, in video games and these fantasy hero narratives.
You'd have to be crazy to do that. And then with NieR, instead, you don't have to be crazy, you just have to genuinely believe what you're doing is right, and you will do it.
He talks about that in a little dev diary about Drakengard 3, and that's a really cool video.
Mm-hmm.
Spoken with a sock puppet because he's really nervous about showing his face.
Yeah. He always comes in either with the sock puppet or Emil's head.
And in a way, it's become kind of a joke that I like Emil a lot, so I'd hope people will still be able to give him a chance, but, he's the guy who made the game. I trust him. And it is pretty fun.
He does a lot of goofy stuff in Emil's skeleton head.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the reasons why he can make an emotionally genuine action RPG is because he says things like, I hope NieR Automata meets your expectations, but don't expect anything.
Yep.
And a lot of his speeches and stuff, like the GDC chat where he mentioned reverse script writing and photo thinking. He initially tried to read like a screenwriting book, and he said, I didn't get it, maybe I'm just stupid. In this talk, in this professional event, I wish he had more self-esteem, because, I want that for anybody, but that attitude informs a different kind of storytelling.
He's a very genuine kind of person, I think.
Yeah.
So, with ending B, you're now on the route to ending C or D, but to get those instead of ending B when you reach the endgame again, you need to collect all the weapons, some of which you get through side quests.
Some of which you buy. This is also a weird tradition in his games.
Though, compared to Drakengard 1's get all the weapons requirement, this is a cakewalk.
I read that LP. That looked really miserable.
Yeah, well, it involves doing things that there's no indication of doing, like stand in front of this painting for 5 seconds. Why would you ever do that in a game where looking at anything isn't a mechanic? In this case, though, I actually collected all the weapons by this point, because I'd just done the side quests and things, and I really wanted to get all the weapons. And I think this requirement leaves out the DLC weapons, because that would otherwise be really hard and take a lot of time.
It does, because this came out before the DLC.
Yeah.
I think I should mention this. Normally, one of the weapons is the iron pipe from the prologue, and there's a really cool side quest where you have to get this weird orb thing, and then you go back to the prologue area and kill shades there, and completing that little event gives you the iron pipe. If you don't have the iron pipe before you get ending B, completing ending B gives you the iron pipe.
That's how I got it. Also, we should mention, because this is the point where you should be well equipped to clear the DLC. For each section you clear, you get the one-handed sword, then the two-handed sword, and then a spear for each of the 3 doors you clear. And also at the end of either the second or the third door, there's a section with enemies who drop a lot of rare upgrade materials. And there's some, sort of unique areas that aren't in the game, or some that you interact with in a way that you wouldn't. The very first room is the staircase you run up to get away from Goose, but instead it's you going slowly down this thing. And you don't even see the bottom of this room in the regular game.
Yeah, the DLC is really interesting.
Yeah. I think my favorite area in the DLC was where you were going through the temple, and it was broken bridges and walkways that you had to go across while really strong enemies were on them.
Yeah, you got to hear that sweet boss fight music.
Yeah.
Also, there's a basketball court. Pretty good. When you clear the second and third doors, you unlock outfits. I didn't know how to equip these. You have to do it from the options menu on the main menu. You can't do it in-game. I was kind of upset about because I finished everything. I didn't know I could do that. But characters' outfits are fine, really. And the ones you unlock are a Kabuki-themed one and a Samurai-themed one.
I didn't like them too much.
It mixed things up.
Yeah. If I had decided to choose Ending C and then play through again to get Ending D, I would have really wanted it. But I just watched Ending C on YouTube and chose Ending D.
I just reloaded my save from before going to the Shadow Lord's castle and just sped through that.
Yeah, same.
So once you have all the weapons, when you get to the end, Ending A and Ending B could have happened together anyway because they're just different perspectives. But this is where things will diverge. Xain is walking off. Seems set to be consumed by the black scrawl.
You know, Sunshine, that black scrawl has almost completely taken you over.
Yeah, I know.
But goddamn, we had fun, huh? Killing and killing and more killing. What a rush!
Yeah.
Wait, no! No! It wasn't fun at all! I turned you into a killing machine. I spread evil and chaos around the world. But it all feels so empty now. Why? I don't understand!
Sorry, Sunshine. Maybe I'm just nicer than you thought.
Stop! Don't treat me this way! I hate it when people are nice to me!
So he goes berserk and overtakes Kaine's body, and you have a final boss fight against her, which is just the biggest curtain of bullets ever to get through.
I'm sad there's no unique music for it, it's just the regular boss theme.
Yeah. After you've done enough damage to her with this bullet barrage, Tyron will make an offer that you can save her. Then you have a melee battle. Once you defeat her, he gives you two options. One, you can kill her and she'll finally die for good. She won't come back to life anymore and have to live as she does. And if you choose this, then the ending version of the theme to play is the Gaelic version of Ashes of Dreams. NieR appears to kiss Xain and says that they'll always be together and you can reload the game and start again. Or, Tyron offers to let you erase yourself from existence, which will also erase Tyron and it will free Xain, and she will get to live. But no one will remember you existed, and no one will remember anything about you. Everything you've done will have just been someone else's work.
Kaine's.
So this is the thing that was spoiled for me before I played the game. Because erasing yourself from existence means wiping your entire save file.
It's worth noting that they're like, hey, we're gonna erase your save file. Are you sure about that? Are you really, really, really sure about that?
Yeah, a lot of people say it like it just springs it on you, like, oh, you chose ending D, haha, get wrecked. But no, like, it tells you, you can choose ending C if you want, and just choose this again if you want later, if you want to keep playing.
You're really only intended to choose ending D after you are completely done with the game.
So it's at this point that I pulled up ending C on YouTube. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Anyways, it's time to finish this.
It's worth mentioning that Yoko Taro has gone on record saying that ending C is what Father NieR would have chosen, and ending D is what Brother NieR would have chosen.
That makes sense. But when you choose ending D and you say yes to all the prompts, it will show you Grimoire advice, like that status screen, and everything one by one gets erased from it. And then it deletes your save file, and then the final cutscene plays, which is Xain talking to Yona, and Yona thanks Xain for defeating the Shadow Lord and saving her. Xain sees a flash for a second of NieR's face. When Yona asks her what's wrong, she can't quite enumerate it, and she just says,
It's like I just found something special. Something very special.
and then it plays the credits one last time, and you hear the Japanese version of Ashes of Dreams. And when you go through the credits, you'll see on the title screen, the one thing that it does save using the system data is there's now a lunar tier on the title screen.
Also, you can't use the same name for NieR anymore.
Yeah. So, now I think it's time we discuss the extended material, which will further change the context for everything that happened and is not in the game. But to discuss all that, first, we need to put this game in the context of what it is a actual sequel to, which is Drakengard 1, which is a PS2 game with a dark fantasy setting where a character forms a bond with a dragon, and he loses the ability to speak, and his life is bonded to the dragons, and they seek revenge against this evil empire which has cultists working for it to unleash these things they call the Watchers. Now, it has 5 endings, and with each one, things get progressively more disastrous, and the first ending is just, alright, now my dragon's gonna be used as the seal to keep these things at bay for all time. That's pretty bad, and that's what the second game is a sequel to. The second, much worse game.
Probably because Yoko Taro didn't have anything to do with it. For some reason.
Yeah, it plays a lot better than 1, by a country mile, but the story is... It has a couple of surprises, but nothing else really. There's a bisexual guy in it, which was kind of unusual for the time, and that's treated very normally. That's about it. Everyone's British, even if they weren't in the first game.
There's some guy who made a pact with death.
Yeah. But with ending D in that game, the seals are broken, and the gods are revealed to the world, and this giant, feminine, mannequin-esque figure appears with a legion of these giant babies, man-eating babies from the sky.
Big old chompers.
And one of your characters who keeps trying to kill the one child member in your party just lets them eat her. And it's really fucked up and weird.
Yeah.
And in ending D, the child member in your party who has sacrificed his time kills himself and locks all the invading gods in just a sphere of frozen time.
A Hershey kiss.
In ending E, instead, the main character and his dragon crash into this thing as it's entering their world, and they both end up in a different world. Ours.
After which they have a rhythm duel in the skies over Tokyo.
They're not dancing or something, you just have to do timed button inputs to cancel out these little energy waves that the boss sends out.
Also, you die in one hit.
Yeah.
This is an ending, you had to get all the weapons to get this, and that involved all those weird things happening. Once you defeat the god, it dissolves into a pile of salt, and as the dragon is musing that your work is done, the Japanese Air Defense Force blows the dragon out of the sky. The credits roll and the camera pans down, and the dragon is impaled on Tokyo Tower. And that is the flash of the thing you see for a second in NieR Replicant.
Then you unlock an F-16 instead of a dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something.
So it turns out that the dead body of this giant god and this dragon, were studied by humans, but it turns out the body of the giant, its weird quasi-salt body, which doesn't quite have the properties of our world salt because it floats weightlessly and stuff, started infecting people and turning them into pillars of salt, and this was called white chlorination syndrome.
Can I mention something stupid?
Sure.
Most of the weapons that you collect in NieR are the same weapons that you collect in Drakengard 1.
Yep. Iron Will is directly Hymir's finger.
It's really weird because that sword is in Drakengard 3 and it's called Iron Will there.
So, after a while though, when trying to seek the cure for white chlorination syndrome, some of the people who get infected instead turn into these red-eyed, white, monstrous creatures called Legion.
The leader, the Red Eye.
I don't think it's actually confirmed, but 90% certain that is Xain, the guy from Drakengard 1.
Yep, he's still there, murdering everyone.
The Japanese government studies the dragon's body, and in doing so discovers the elementary particle of magic known as Maso. And using this, they develop everything else in the plot. They create the replicants to be their bodies, but also these replicants are immune to white chlorination syndrome and can fight those battles for them. And additionally, they create those books, and those are meant to be part of the program that will save the human race. At first I thought it was weird that modern day humans would make magic books, but in a way I think it makes a kind of sense to say that the inevitable result of making things with magic is a book.
There were 13 of these books.
So it turns out that NieR, the original, the book he was given, Grimoire Noir, was one of many that were made. There were many copies made. But when most people touched them, they would immediately relapse and be on the way to becoming shades. In this case, NieR just happened to be a match for this thing, which made him a stable gestalt who could generate Maso that would keep the other gestalts stable. Because it turns out the black scrawl that will eventually kill off a replicant happens when the original relapses, which is why Yona is sick in both versions. That whole time skip was spent with the governments of the world using these replicants to fight off the Legion and defeat Red Eye, which survived like a nuclear weapon. But then later, a different replicant soldier went to the site where Red Eye died and inadvertently brought it back to life. Like, this is 2 games worth of backstory happening here.
Basically, that replicant was trying to resurrect one of their loved ones, and in wishing for their loved one to come back, instead, they did come back as the Red Eye, and then immediately killed them.
Yeah. And there were a bunch of different crusades, and there were plots involving child soldiers because of a faulty promise that they would be more resistant to white chlorination syndrome, like the drug that would prevent it was more effective on children. So a lot of stuff to go into. We'll link Grimoire NieR, but there are some things that we want to discuss on here, and I'll let me take it.
So, Grimoire Rubrung, Grimoire Weiss, and Grimoire Noir were originally a group of child soldiers working for the Hamlin organization, which was basically sent to destroy the Legion because of the previous mention of that children are better able to take in luciferays and last longer.
That ended up apparently being a lie. And Hamlin organization refers to the Pied Piper of Hamlin.
Yeah. So, 13 child soldiers were brought into a room as part of a secret mission that would have freed them from their service, as they were told, and were left to kill each other because each one was handed a different tome. And were told, so yeah, kill each other with that tome, and 2 of you get to go free. Weiss and Rubrung were a pair of girls. Weiss had saved Rubrung earlier against the Legion, so they were kind of friends and they spoke the same language, so they were able to communicate where most of the other kids in the area did not. Whenever someone would be killed in that room, they would get dragged into a book. Rubrung was the 3rd to last one killed. Weiss was the final survivor, and Noir was the 2nd to last survivor. Though they technically survived, they still got absorbed into the book anyway, and they were never going to be let out.
So that book you fought in the library was in fact someone who Weiss once knew but couldn't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't one of those 2 most important books, so she couldn't speak or anything.
Yep. There's also one extra ending that wasn't included in the game, known as Ending E. Grimoire NieR describes an extra ending. It takes place after Ending D, where Kaine's forgotten about NieR, but at the same time, she knows something's wrong and that something's kind of missing there. And to vent, she goes to the Forest of Myth to kill shades, and finds that instead of being a forest anymore, it's now kind of a hybrid plant-machine thing. A young boy presents himself to her, and she immediately chops his head off. But the young man continues to explain that they're a structure kind of like Grimoire Weiss that is designed to oversee the replicant and Miijhal process. Tells her it will help her remember if she can keep fighting. Like, she's presented with P-33 and someone that's familiar but that she does not know. Also a clone of herself. And Emil then shows up with an extra pair of arms.
Yeah, he rebuilt his body.
Good job.
Even better.
Eventually, they defeat the clones. The clones melt. And they realize that the tree is kind of the source controlling it, so they go to destroy the inside of the tree. And inside of the tree, Kaine is embraced by the white light, and she hears the voice of someone telling her to go back, which pisses her off. And she seems to know it's NieR at that point, and starts going off on him, telling him not to make decisions for her because she'll decide for herself, and of course cursing at him. Then she gets a push from someone, the light fades, and she emerges on top of a giant technological flower with the body of NieR, except significantly younger. It is a very bizarre ending.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty wild.
Also, I think the implication is that the Great Tree in the Forest of Myth was a supercomputer.
Yep.
So the crystals it had that were the memories of the world were probably some form of holographic memory.
That makes sense.
Pretty weird. I can understand why they didn't actually end the game with that, because it's... yeah.
It sounds like it would have been a boss rush.
Yeah. And also the cost of adding a playable Kaine. Now that that's all out of the way. So, the action of killing the Shadow Lord by NieR sets in motion the supposed extinction of mankind, because there's no longer a source of Maso to keep any gestalts from relapsing. And that seemed to be where the story ended, and in one sense, it is really depressing. It's the end of humanity, but remember the last words you hear out of Kaine. I found something really special. Because in a world where everyone is a victim, that was created by these people who tried to gain power in addition to saving themselves from this catastrophe, it really was kind of inevitable that something like this would happen. They manipulated the original NieR to make sure he'd keep giving them Maso while promising to cure his daughter, which they didn't do, which made him take actions into his own hands, which led to the replicant NieR swearing revenge on him and eventually killing him. This was all their fault. So, having these characters who can find something to hang on to in a world like that is the best that's gonna come to them, and they do.
It is also worth noting that Emil would live no matter what, because he's immortal, and there's actually a CD drama where he becomes a mecha and fights space aliens.
That's great.
Speaking of aliens, that might be the hook that drives into NieR Automata.
Yep.
Yeah, so for a while, that was the end of it. Up until the Miracle E3, where NieR Automata was announced, Shenmue 3 was announced, Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced. It was unreal, really, that all these things were announced together. But there it was, and details have come forth about NieR Automata, and that it stars androids who were apparently sent to reclaim Earth from robots, because, yeah, actually those still exist, but sent by humans living on the moon.
Yeah, one of the things that some extraneous material says is Gestalts and Replicants finally learned to work together when they are under threat by aliens.
That sounds like a pretty interesting direction. The ways that Yoko Taro let people down the passive in games that play poorly. So what do you do about that? Well, you make this episode another easy 6 degrees of separation game with the Vanquish episode, and you hire someone from Platinum Games to handle the comeback.
I'm really excited for that because, from what I hear, everybody who's working on it at Platinum was a big fan of the original NieR.
Yep, it basically has almost all my favorite figures in the industry working on it. Because it's got Yoko Taro, it's got Platinum Games, it also has Akihiro Yoshida doing the design, and Keiichi Okabe doing the music.
Yeah, and of course, crucially, they've left in board drifting and also added elk jumping. In fact, when I originally wanted to do this episode, which faced a whole spate of delays, sorry, one of the things when this game news originally came out is I wasn't even sure if it's an RPG or not, but it's also that. On one hand, I kind of worry that people will use that game as an excuse to trash on this one, because in a lot of ways it's gonna be better. But the other thing is, I don't think Yoko Taro is gonna do what he did again. Because there were twists in the other games of his, but the twist in Dragon Guard 1 is not the same as NieR. I'm really glad that I can have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
Me too.
One thing I hope is that they keep some of the elements I did like about NieR, like actually having weird characters. That's kind of big for me.
We didn't really go into that, actually.
So, yeah, when it comes to localization, there's one thing I don't like about this game, and that happens to be that the English localization removed any mention of Emil being gay. In the Japanese version, Emil was intended to have a crush on NieR, and like in Grimoire NieR, they have an interview. So the interviewer asks, one theory was that Emil developed feminine feelings and liked NieR as a result of fusing with his sister, and Yoko Taro was just like, no, Emil's gay!
I think I have a feeling I know why they took that out, and it's because NieR is a dad and Emil is a child.
Further into the interview, they say, there's always seemed to be some characters with unusual sexual preferences in Yoko's works, and he's like, how you define unusual is the question. If we look around, we can definitely see homosexuals. Few in number they may be. People like that exist. It's simply the way the world works. They're labeled with normal, unusual, and compared quite often, but the difference between people with certain sexual preferences lies purely in number. Some are quite abundant, some are not, but we're all in the same world. I never intended for them to appear as special.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
Yeah. I also appreciated that Kaine was intersex. That's something I never would have expected to see in a game that isn't porn.
Yeah, I mean, even with NieR giving her a kiss in the end, it's not played up in any way. It's like, oh, it's so weird or freaky or something. Like, it's a person he had a connection with.
Yeah.
To anyone who sexualized more so than the games, like the outfit did, who felt that way, reacted that way to Kaine, and then found out that she was intersex, if that affected your view of it, you felt like tricked or cheated or something, that's really on you.
Yeah, they did not fetishize her being intersex. They honestly barely brought it up, and that was another thing that was kind of removed more in the localization, but it never came off like they were trying to make that something sexually exotic or like a fan service thing. It's just part of her character.
Yeah.
So, that's NieR. I really wanted to do this episode because I've never really quite had the experience with this game I've had with other games. Even if I had an emotional response to other games, this is the closest a game has come to making me cry. It's not the game's fault that I didn't cry, I actually just have kind of a tough time getting all the way there, but I felt that way.
God, this game had such an impact on me. Like, I brought up the scene with Emil, his transformation, that really affected me as a trans person. The way NieR responded, I appreciate that they didn't treat any of the characters like they were just outright evil. And even when they did terrible things, they were often shown to still also be good people sometimes. Even Tyron, at least in the end, came through.
All the ways in which he's terrible really proved to be empty and were only done because he had that power over someone.
Yeah, and they're using that as a coping strategy more than just being inherently evil.
In a world that's really, truly ruined.
Yeah, I just really love that aspect about it. Instead of trying to have clear, obvious good guys and clear, obvious bad guys, both NieRs had their own reasons to be doing what they did that were justified, and you can't really say that either one of them was right or wrong.
Yeah, because they have the same mission.
Yeah.
That's something I really love about the series.
I'm fond of the game. I think it came at me at a pretty important time, which was when I was a teenager. So it kind of helped me shape some of my worldviews, maybe helped me to be a bit more thoughtful. But I'm really glad I played it, even if I only played through it once.
Yeah. Obviously, I played it much more recently, and I think that a lot of things I was going through in my life at the time, it helped me cope with feelings of loss in a way. Not that I wouldn't have managed if I hadn't played NieR, but it gave me a different perspective on it. Can't say that for a lot of games now, can you?
Yeah. I also do appreciate how it uses the fact that it's a game to get the player to act how they want and approach things in a certain way. They use the general hero story that almost every game goes by to get you to assume certain things that aren't really stated. Then they play with that, and also the way they play with genre and different styles of games in the process.
Yeah.
It feels like a story that could only exist in a game.
I feel the same way about it.
Yeah. Alright, well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. Next one's gonna try and be about something a lot simpler, and maybe it could get done sooner than a matter of months.
I can't wait for Dragon's Dogma. I'll talk about that for an eternity.
I probably should get around to getting ready for that one at some point. So, thank you, Miijhal, again for joining me on this episode, and thanks, Xain.
No problem.
Me, where can they find you? Even though this is repeated 3 times on different media.
Well, you can find me on Twitter as Sarah Ottenberg, or on Tumblr as literally the Terminator.
A lot of good screenshots. A lot of good character designs, character creators.
I love breaking that shit.
If Black Desert Online hasn't given you nightmares yet, you haven't looked hard enough. And how about you, Xain?
You can find me on Twitter at Xain0. That's me. Sometimes I'm funny. Sometimes I tell jokes. Mostly I just shitpost about everything.
Also, you most of all are very good at pulling out anime and manga screenshots for whatever reply.
I have too many of them.
You can find me on Twitter, still at BeamSplashX. I'm still finding ways to post jokes that are just really stupid and make people angry with how dumb they are. Which is all I want out of life, really. So you can follow me there if you'd like. You can also follow the show at ThoughtABTGames on Twitter. We've had some streams, had calls for responses and stuff like that. Also, to be fair to the 2 negative emails we got, most people didn't email because all they had to say in response to that tweet asking for emails was, NieR is good, I like it a lot. You can follow the show there. You can find the website at wethoughtAboutGames.com, which will take you to the Tumblr page. That's also where we'll have the show notes and links to the bonus episodes and places where you can stream or download the episodes. Also where we'll post up the stream recordings. The second Phantasy Star stream and the Resident Evil stream are still, I think, really good. So yeah, that should about wrap it up. Thanks everyone, and keep thinking.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.